This is the day. A poem for every birthday. This is the day that you were made. May you rejoice and be glad for it. This is a day that's made of sun. May you drink and be filled with it. This is a day for you to make. May you give shape and great voice to it. Welcome to the latest floating poetry broadcast, and thank you for leaning in, some of you newly, some occasionally, others of you regularly. I'm very happy you're here for show 146 in my ongoing weekly series, coming to you live from the long-lived Rhode Island coast. This is your poet and poetorialist, Colin Goedecke, a voice for living our days more fully, more lively, more poetically. In broadcast 145, we engaged in pillow talk, getting into bed, over and under the covers, quietly to cozily to conversationally. Not only those intimate words between lovers, but into our resting, reading, sleeping, dreaming, and other time amidst the blankets, sheets, and pillows, and sometimes other bedfellows. This week, birthdays. The day each of us arrived, that you began life on earth. The day, every year of living, many celebrate. A day, some births of historically notable figures, ancient to modern, who contributed significantly to the wider world, are remembered, celebrated, venerated. A day that's an opportunity for you to toast, honor, appreciate, or elevate a loved one, a favorite someone, or your own precious self. And no less, maybe something significant you've created or achieved or realized, have given birth to, or are in the process of bringing forth, of birthing. I felt this would make a jolly good theme for a broadcast and bring welcome feelings, memories, and musings around birthdays, your own and others. So you might say I've baked a layer cake of cultural commentary, poetry, and inquiry for you, for us. I hope you find inviting, engaging, maybe inspiring. Let's begin with an early African-American poem from the 19th century. Born Like the Pines by James Ephraim McGirt. Born like the pines to sing, the harp and song in my breast. Though far and near, there's none to hear, I'll sing as the wind's request. To tell the trend of my lay is not for the harp or me. I'm only to know from the winds that blow what the theme of my song shall be. Born like the pines to sing, the harp and song in my breast. As the winds sweep by, I'll laugh or cry. In the winds, I cannot rest. Thank you, James Ephraim McGirt. For the day of mothers, the mother tongue, the one we heard, learned in utero, from the first one that used it to speak to us, shape vowels for us, tell stories that glowed, sang lullabies that soothed. As we tuned our ears, began to tune ourself, our near-born, newborn self, new-made senses to the world around us, and fountained forth words of wonder, of sorrow, of tenderness and gladness alike, in the shared language of our shared nature, our dear mother tongue. Poem for Alex Schwarzkopf on his 31st birthday. The soloist, S-O-U-L poetorialist, who steps onto the stage every day, whether the house is full or empty, loud or hushed, dark or brightly lighted, and opens his soul to sing, sometimes find its extraordinary song, a song no one else on earth but he can sing, but all awakened souls can hear, do deeply, movingly hear. I happen to have been a preemie, born in 1958, prematurely, 8 weeks early, actually 7.5, at 2.5 pounds. And I made it. I'm happy to say I made it through in those days. That was pretty primitive, I think, technology, but here I am. And aside from that, there are many amazing stories, far more than mine, of premature babies who have beaten the much bigger odds and gone on to live happy, healthy lives. Here are a few examples that I found. Amelia Taylor, born in 2006 at just 21 weeks and 6 days, one of the smallest surviving premature babies in the world. She weighed less than 10 ounces at birth and was just 9.5 inches long. But she survived and thrived. Shayna Richardson, in 1993, born in the U.S. at 23 weeks, 6 days, weighed 1 pound, 3 ounces, was given a low chance of survival. She defied the odds, went on to live a healthy life, graduating from college and working as a counselor for premature infants. James Elgin Gill, 1987, born in Canada, 21 weeks and 5 days, 1 pound, 6 ounces, so premature that his skin was transparent. He survived and went on to live a good life, eventually become a professor of law at the University of Toronto. And Tom Thumb, in the 1700s, a baby boy named Charles Sherwood Stratton was born in Connecticut and weighed 9 pounds. However, he stopped growing at 6 months old, diagnosed with a form of dwarfism. He later became famous as, quote, Tom Thumb, a performer in P.T. Barnum's circus. Despite his small size, he lived a long and successful life, traveling the world and meeting many famous people. So, you might be a preemie yourself, but there's always hope for all of us, whether we come early or late. But back in 2016, I've thought about it at times, how that influenced my life. And I composed this poem back then about my way ahead of scheduled birth and what the actual informational experience involved might have affected me being in an incubator, which was then called an isolette. So here's the poem, The Isolette. Once I incubated under glass, not pheasantly or pleasantly, as the rather charming French-sounding word, à la noisette, gaufrette, mignonette, would make it sound. I arrived 7 weeks early, perhaps in some great hurry to land in the world, get out in the open, only to be boxed in, albeit transparently, for quite a while, watching the world float by. Over time, half a century and change since, I've wondered if this is why I became a deep listener, keen observer, voicer of life and love, in poetry and imagery, from a starting point of great isolation to open, eager, liberating exaltation. The isolette. Well, of course, we each came. Everyone who's here now or ever lived came through the vessel of another body, a mother. So I wanted to raise a particular toast to them all for making us possible, each and all, alive and past and to come. Dear mothers, thank you, because we could never have done any of this without you. Could never have set foot on earth to begin with, let alone landed in the warm and welcoming lap of this life, our life, or been able to touch, see, and feel it, learn from it, wonder about, even sing about it, be filled, surprised, and often thrilled by it all. Without you, dear mothers, we would not have had a leaping off point of a tender and surrendering kind for love, for cherishing ourselves and others as freely, as innocently as you naturally have, for being any kind of caring friends, partners, dreamers, lovers, or now or later appreciators of what it takes to bring a being to the world, a child of pure possibility into the world. How much giving, daily nurturing, oceans of hoping and believing. So for myself, and if I may, countless men, women, and children everywhere, to each and all of you mothers, thank you dearly, forever. Well, before we carry on further, how about some questions about birthdays? Do you love celebrating yours? Or do you not? Either way, why? If yes, what do you love or like most about the occasion? What's one of the best birthdays you ever had or can remember? And what made it so wonderful? What about the most surprising birthday party you had, were either given or were part of? Is there a personally favorite birthday treat, a dessert, or other delight that you enjoy? Mine happened to be coconut cake. As a boy, and there's old photos of this, I just loved having one that was shaped like a rabbit. It had paper pink ears. Had that for an early while, and then moved on to coconut cream pie. Still have a weakness for that. A really good one. Have you ever witnessed a birth firsthand? If so, what was the experience like? How did it feel? And for any mother listening who birthed a child, was it transporting or transformational, the birthing itself? How much of it do you remember? How vividly do you remember that? That time. For any mother-to-be leaning in here, what's your greatest hope or wish for your coming child, if you had one? Do you have a vivid memory about the birth of any child, one of your own or of a grandchild, or the birth of a relative or friend's child? Especially a birth you were greatly emotional about for some reason. If you were or are an expectant parent, did you sense prior that your whole life was going to change? And did it change afterward? And if it did, how so? Was it dramatic? Is there something beautiful you've birthed in yourself, in your life? Maybe a life dream you gave birth to or are about to? And finally, if you were celebrating your last birthday and last day on earth, who would you want around you? And what would you have to say to everyone? Questions for you, curious about your answers. Well, historically, the use of the compound word birthday to refer to the anniversary of one's birth is believed to have originated in the 15th century. First recorded use in English is from 1570 in a letter written by the English navigator and explorer Sir Francis Drake. Wikipedia. As I was curious about different rituals and also foods, I went to Wikipedia under birthday, and I like this. In Nepal and India, on a child's first birthday, their head is shaved while being held by a special fire. Removal of the hair is believed to cleanse the child of any evil in past lives and symbolizes a renewal of the soul. But that, interesting. And yes, birthdays are celebrated differently around the world, including the foods, and so here are a few. In Japan, There may be people listening, so you know. Traditional birthday food is a type of sponge cake called kurisumasu keiki, Christmas cake, decorated with strawberries and whipped cream. In Mexico, pastel de tres leches, a sponge cake soaked in a mixture of 3 different types of milk. In Brazil, brigadeiro, a type of chocolate truffle that's made with condensed milk, cocoa powder, and butter. In the Philippines, pancit, a type of noodle dish that's made with meat, vegetables, and a soy sauce. In Russia, shashlik, a type of grilled meat marinated in vinegar, oil, and spices. Well, how about that? And what about your culture or your family traditions? What was served up at the birthdays? I also discovered some unusual nativity rituals across cultures, ancient to present, like the Feast of Asses, celebrated in France and other parts of Europe, involved bringing a donkey into a church, dressing it up in special garments, and leading it down the aisle while singing and making animal noises. Okay, French animal noises, I guess, obviously. The Aztec, this is a word, Xiuhpohualli. Let's give it a go. Every 52 years, the Aztecs, it was a major event that marked the end of a cycle and the beginning of a new one. It involved the entire population who would extinguish all fires and then relight them from a sacred fire. The Chinese longevity peach. In their culture, it's believed that eating a peach can bring longevity, and so a giant peach is often made for the birthday of an elder. And the Swedish smörgåstårta. In Sweden, it's a tradition to celebrate a birthday with one of those, which is a sandwich cake made with layers of bread fillings and toppings such as shrimp, salmon, and eggs. I don't think I'm going to have that anytime soon, but you might be interested. Okay, different languages. I always love language, and I was curious about what some of them, I know some, but what the others might be. So I'll do my best with our pronunciations. It's fun anyway. Of course, Spanish, cumpleaños, French, anniversaire, German, Geburtstag, Italian, compleanno, Portuguese, anniversario, Russian is Den Rozdenia, Japanese, Tanjubi, Hindi, Janmarin, Swahili, Siku ya kuzaliwa, Dutch, Verjaardag, and Swedish, Födelsedag. That's pretty sort of muscular, isn't it? All right. Well, I do love writing poems on the birth of children, of dear friends, and family members. Like this poem, very recent, for the arrival of Sana, S-A-N-A, the daughter, who's appeared in the lives and hearts of Thomas, Felix, and Brianna Blasco out in California just weeks ago. And I wrote this blessing poem for her, Sana Blasco Felix, and her birth. Sana. Swimming in from a sea of creation to a sea of being and embodied meaning, with a name already infusing an essence. Healthy in Spanish, hopeful in Tagalog. Quranically speaking, to shine dazzlingly. And so you are newly, freshly in the world, and may you always, ever beautifully, across this life. Back in December of 2007, a celebration of, in poetry, of the birth of my own second grandchild. Back in time, another lifetime, another incarnation of mine during my long married life among the Italians. This was for the newly arrived grandson, Leonardo. Title is Nato al dente, born al dente. Faster than it takes to make linguine for the vongole, or open oysters, or place a phonograph needle onto an old recording of Caruso returning to Sorrento. Before the moon had time to rise and shine its nose and cheeks for the occasion, and anyone had time to think past you being a beautiful boy or girl, but the universe, knowing all, found plenty of time to wink. And while millions of men and women put on their pajamas and put out the lights to go to bed, ecco e Presto, you were born, perfectly al dente, into the warm and welcoming bowl of your mother's breasts and your father's arms, into a future bright with family, friends, and feasts, into a home with heart, all sunny side up, and an open wide world, and our now even more wonder-filled lives. I hope that then baby and now boy is doing wonderfully. When We Meet is a poem for a newer child of a soul brother of mine, Henry Hargreaves, my New Zealander soul brother, and I had yet to meet little Charlotte in person, given the pandemic, and on her second birthday. I also wrote a piece for her arrival, but on her second birthday, and her first I did. When we meet, they'll be smiling. Oh yes, each to the other. Words unimportant, but if we have them, all the better. Your early ones, my later ones, lovely ones, like our crinkled lips, eyes, faces, spirits, also meeting, in a first moment, in the air of where we are, naturally, joyfully. For now, though, till then, the looking ahead, the feeling ahead, to the first moment we, little one, budding one, can begin to meet. Dorian Lauch's poem about one or two poems here about the birthdays of family members. Dorian Lauch's poem, Ray at 14. Bless this boy, born with the strong face of my older brother, the one I loved most, who jumped with me from the roof of the playhouse, my hand in his hand. On Friday nights we watched Twilight Zone, and he let me hold the bowl of popcorn, a blanket draped over our shoulders, saying, "Don't be afraid." I was never afraid when I was with my big brother, who let me touch the baseball-sized muscles living in his arms, who carried me on his back through the lonely neighborhood, held tight to the fender of my bike until I made him let go. The year he was 14, he looked just like Ray, and when he died at 22 on a roadside in Germany, I thought he was gone forever. But Ray runs into the kitchen, dirty T-shirt, torn jeans, pushes back his sleeve. He says, "Feel my muscle," and I do. Thank you, Dorian Lauchs. Ray at 14. Good one. Jacqueline Woodson, genetics. My mother has a gap between her two front teeth. So does Daddy Gunner. Each child in this family has the same space connecting us. Our baby brother, Roman, was born pale as dust. His soft brown curls and eyelashes stop people on the street. Whose angel child is this, they want to know. When I say my brother, the people wear doubt thick as a cape until we smile and the cape falls. Thank you, Jacqueline Woodson. Genetics from her collection, Brown Girl Dreaming. Denise Lowe, L-O-W, walking with my Delaware grandfather. Walking home, I feel a presence following and realize he is always there, that native man with coal black hair who is my grandfather. In my first memories, he is present, mostly wordless, resident in the house where I was born. My mother shows him the cleft in my chin, identical to his. I am swaddled and blinking in the kitchen light. So we are introduced. We never part. Sometimes I forget he lodges in my house still, the bone house where my heart beats. I carry his mother's framework, a sturdy structure. I learn his birthright. I hear his mother's teachings through what my mother said of her. She kept a pot of stew on the stove all day for anyone to eat. She never went to church but said you could be a good person anyway. She fed hobos during the 30s, her back porch a regular stopover. Every person has rights, no matter what color. Be respectful. This son of hers, my grandfather, still walks the streets with me. Some twist of blood and heat still spark across the time bridge. Here, listen. Air draws through these lungs made from his. His blood still pulses through this hand. Thank you, Denise Lowe. Walking with my Delaware grandfather from her collection, Mélange Bloc. And of course, many poems have been written and are written. I've written for some loves in my life. This was for a once soulmate of mine back in time. Those exuberant feelings we can infuse into written or spoken words about those particular kinds of loves in our life. This was from 2010. Oh, lovely lady of the spring. That year after The Catcher in the Rye caught the world's eyes, Matisse put a finishing touch on his chapel in Vence. Gene Kelly danced through the bright showered streets of Paris, and radio said hello to young lovers wherever they were. A glorious child arrived and caught the world's imagination, began drinking in life and pouring out heart, following the golden rule of two and the silver light of her mother moon. As much as that girl and woman, as you, have been shaped by these indelible decades, you have shaped them truly in return, with a luminous soul and graceful hand, a tender heart, and your winsome wildflower eyes. A lovely lady of the spring. Ted Berrigan, 44th birthday evening at Harris's. 9 stories high, 2nd Avenue. On the roof there's a party. All the friends are there watching by the light of the moon, the blazing sun, go down over the side of the planet to light up the underside of Earth. There are long bent telescopes for the friends to watch this through. The friends are all in shadow. I can see them from my bed inside my head. 44 years I've loved these dreams today. 17 years since I wrote for the first time a poem on my birthday. Why did I wait so long? My land a good land. Its highways go to many good places where many good people were found. A home land whose song comes up from the throat of a hummingbird and it ends where the sun goes to across the skies of blue. I live there with you. Thank you, Ted Berrigan, from his selected poems. And yes, mentioning at the outset the friends to celebrate. I celebrate them often, but always on their birthdays. And always in the energy of their day comes the composition of a poem. That's how I do it. If it comes, and it usually does, I invite it. But best to honor them that way. They deserve it, and their specialness of self and the gift of their presence and presences in my life. Like this one for a soul sister, for Nadia Cohen, water spirit. I know you are one, a naiad, in only slight disguise, a spirit and body that knows its way, finds its way through many other waters, sweet but smaller, swims through deep wells, hidden springs, and dry spells, to the sea, always at last and best, to the sea, to that precious, boundless source of your solace and aliveness. Yes, a flowing water spirit, a salty wonder of a woman, worth discovering, worth honoring, worth mythologizing. And for another soul sister, this one out in San Francisco, Rachel Menard. This was on her 53rd birthday last September. Only you have that je ne sais quoi, that abiding wa, that feng shui and Milky Way about you, that bravura, sprezzatura, vivid aura. Yes, extraordinarily all in one and only you. The $64,000 question for my cousin Carolyn McBride on her 64th birthday is how much joy you've found, made, shared in your 64 years here on earth, in your precious years of living and loving, birthing, mothering, being, shining your heart light on the world. I do know the answer to how much you've brought to mine. 64 parens 000 dollar question. A question we might well asked, dear listeners, at times. And likewise, realize how much joy certain people bring to our lives. Just the thought of them sometimes brings. You are the bud. For my dear friend, Rose Marie Bartol, on her birthday, who we call Rosebud, calling out the beauty I see in her, of which there is much. You are the bud and the vase, the petals and the stem, climber and trailer, double, treble bloomer, Greekly rhodon, aeolically rhodon, beautifully hipped, greenly leaved, ever loved, across time and gardens, the pages of poets, the canvases of painters, the musings and memories of lovers, all imbibing the delicate sight, scent, sunstroke chant of the emergent rose, budding freshly into being. The Jack out of the box, for my soul brother Jack Hall, on his 65th birthday last March 30th, who I was actually FaceTiming with this very day as I walked along the ocean. And we'll be toasting again, not too far from now, my fellow Aries. The Jack out of the box. When you turn the handle of his heart in a loving way, his being plays beautiful melodies, and he appears not stiffly or startlingly, but gently and soulfully, sometimes playfully. All turns, all times in his true colors, candor, and kinetic Aries ardor. Wonder what I'll be writing about when we get to March 30th. We shall see. We shall see. And a poem I composed just a few days ago for my marvelously musical man, my fine friend Jimmy Roberts in New York City. Frère Jacques, are you singing? Yes, you're singing, Brother Jim, Brother Jim. All your heart is flowing, all your gifts are showing. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. I can imagine that tune was in my head, Frère Jacques. Well, I spoke of mothers earlier. They're implied in all of this, in all of us, of course, as we move about our lives and world. And while this piece is dedicated to one woman in particular, it could surely be said of others that you may know, or of you yourself, perhaps. Spirit of the Rye, for Nicole Centeno on her birthday. Woman of 100 grains, source of the bread of good words and deeds, flowered from the heart, hardy bread that feeds souls, sons to strangers. Woman of sprouting ways, who thrives through times, places, weathers, and cold winters, bringing fields of gold and green to life and savor. Beautiful woman, long and slender, earth lover, seed sower, nourisher, sun catcher, deep-rooted spirit of the rye. And likewise certain men of great inner light, beauty, character, integrity. Yes, I'm inspired and graced to know such men. And Thomas Felix is one. This was for his 50th birthday in 2021. There are men who shine through the world like radiant suns, whose voices resound in the ears like fresh rainfalls, wind songs, bird calls, whose loving faces fill hearts, spirits to the brim, who show us how beautifully a soul can be, can grow, can flow and flower through this life. And you, yes, you are one. Well, no matter our age, younger to elder, birthdays can certainly be poignant. A birthday card by Ted Kuser. In her 80s now, and weak and ill with emphysema, my aunt sends me a birthday card, a tossing ocean with clipper ship, and wishes me well at 44. She's included a note, hard-bitten in ballpoint, with a pen that sometimes skips whole words but never turns back, to tell me her end of the news, how the steroids have softened her spine, how every X-ray shows more shattered bone. Her hasty words skip in and out, their little grooves washed clean of ink, the message rising and falling like shortwave radio, sending this hurried SOS with love. I know a lot of his work, but I didn't know that. It's quite touching, that. Let's read that again later. Well, birthdays, for those in the upper reaches of age, as a number of my beloved friends and mentors are, 80s, 90s, sometimes many in the 70s, a chance to underscore their virtues and value in the world, in my eyes. And one of them I was hoping to see the other day but couldn't make it to visit as he headed from Florida back to Maine, Richard Allen, on his 80th birthday this past December. An ode to him, Richard the Tender-Hearted, a lion of a man with a lamb of a soul, whose realm has been the world of spirit, whose reign of self, rule of thumb, has been strong and lifelong, whose role has been to nobly, ever humbly roam the byways of this land, as a seeker of heartfulness, as a voice of gentleness, a faithful model of kindness, a beautiful embodier and generous bestower of tenderness. I encourage you, friends, to speak the beautiful truths you see and feel about such people in your world, in your life. One more from my circle. Some of you know I'm fond of spicing in aspects of history at times to various poems, especially birthdays, when I can correlate something playful or colorful that happened on the same day or the same year back in the time of that person's birth, from books and plays to songs, films, and world events. So this is for my dear friend of 40-plus years, Judith Carrington, on her 83rd birthday, December 2022. From the fall of 39, from a wizardly Oz and wuthering heights, moonlight serenades and a bell-ringing hunchback of Notre Dame, 10 cents a dance or a gallon of gas, nylons and atomic bombs, and oceans of happenings and unfoldings, to the God-sent effervescent rise, then to now, of you. Robert Frost said, "A diplomat is a man who always remembers a woman's birthday, but never remembers her age." And Walt Disney said, "Growing old is mandatory, but growing up is optional." What about the reflecting you do on our birthdays, on your birthday, especially if you're older, been around a while? Linda Pastan has this poem, Counting Backwards. How did I get so old, I wonder, contemplating my 67th birthday? Dyslexia smiles. I'm 76, in fact. There are places where at 60 they start counting backwards. In Japan, they start again from 1. But the numbers hardly matter. It's the physics of acceleration I mind, the way time speeds up as if it hasn't guessed the destination, where, look, I see my mother and father bearing a cake, waiting for me at the starting line. Thank you, Linda. Pastan. Counting backwards. John Updike, Vero Beach birthday. 70 years ago, 1,000 miles north of this strand, a bundle of innards and outward signifiers was conjured from the reluctant loins of a Pennsylvania lass with literary aspirations. It took forceps to get me out, but once out, I resolved to have what fun there was: candy, the comic strips, the opposite sex, and golf. Now here, among retired CEOs deposited in walled communities whose 7-figure pastel domiciles bespeak funereal discipline, a wealth of wasps preserved in money's sparkling amber, the forceps tug me one notch further out. Thank you, John Updike. Billy Collins, Cheerios. One bright morning in a restaurant in Chicago, As I waited for my eggs and toast, I opened the Tribune only to discover that I was the same age as Cheerios. Indeed, I was a few months older than Cheerios, for today, the newspaper announced, was the 70th birthday of Cheerios, whereas mine had occurred earlier in the year. Already I could hear them whispering behind my stooped and threadbare back. Why, that dude's older than Cheerios, the way they used to say. Why, that's as old as the hills. Only the hills are much older than Cheerios or any American breakfast cereal, and more noble and enduring are the hills. I surmised, as a bar of sunlight illuminated my orange juice. Thank you, Billy Collins. Yes, the musings that can arise as we go along, year to year, decade to decade, and look back at our beginnings and the journey of our being and becoming. So this poem is R.E. : birth, rebirth, for our spring equinoxes. First breath to last breath. What flows between is the reveling and leveling of living, the many faces and found graces of loving, the transcendental moments of great epiphanies, deep ecstasies, timeless memories, the embodiments of you becoming even now, ever new, ever free to spring. You keep rising. For Tom Orzo, my friend in the baking world, on his 73rd birthday last February. You keep rising. You're kneaded, you're stretched and folded, and you rise. Keep rising, warmly, gratefully, to each day. And yes, dear listeners, always be rising. Well, now to the last sharings for this time of ours together and this theme of birthdays. If you had to close the book of your life, prepare for an otherworldly fuga mundi. Ready or not, here you go, forevermore. What would the last page, the end note, grace note be? The luminous face or close embrace of a great love? A simple, blissful childhood reverie? The first crisp taste of autumn at the green end of summer? And what table of its contents would you expose, to mark out the main chapters, the major chords, depth and breadth between birth and death of your living and loving, your seeking and discovering, if you knew you had to close the book? Christina Rossetti, a birthday. My heart is like a singing bird whose nest is in a watered shoot. My heart is like an apple tree whose boughs are bent with thick-set fruit. My heart is like a rainbow shell that paddles in a halcyon sea. My heart is gladder than all these because my love is come to me. Raise me a dais of silk and down, hang it with vair and purple dyes, carve it in doves and pomegranates and peacocks with 100 eyes, work it in gold and silver grapes and leaves and silver fleurs-de-lis, because the birthday of my life is come. My love has come to me. Thank you, Christina Rossetti. The shape of your life. You shape it as much as you humanly can. Then it in turn shapes you, as much as it so wisely and serendipitously hasn't finished doing. Carves, fires, etches, and models you, sometimes throws you, as much as you need to bring your gifts to light, to self and the world. The ones like fingerprints that belong to you alone. The ones that touch senses, minds, spirits, sparks them, even changes or greatly rearranges them. Rare gifts we would miss, and you, the animate, deeply resident person around them, if they and you were gone or never chanced to appear. Joyce Sutphin, The second half. Everyone will go on celebrating the old birthday, counting the years as usual, but I will count myself new from this inception, this imprint of my own desire. The second half of my life will be wide-eyed, fingers shifting through fine sands, arms loose at my sides, wandering feet. There will be new dreams every night, and the drapes will never be closed. I will toss my string of keys into a deep well and old letters into the grate. The second half of my life will be ice breaking up on the river, rain soaking the fields, a hand held out, a fire and smoke going upward, always up. Second half. Thank you, Joyce Sutphin. Poem from Sag Harbor, composed on my 60th birthday, which was, I'll be 65 come April 5th. And a point of appreciation of the self that I, quote, wear, the body I inhabit, the 60-year-old birthday suit. Beautifully draping, perfectly form-fitting, this 60-year-old birthday suit, as I stand inside it in the early spring sun warming in through the windows, as I study it in the one-way, two-way mirror that reflects back its 5 full decades through all skies and seasons, under many stars and many moons, inside different rooms, stories, romances. This suit I'd love to wear to sport. My best suit, Sunday best, everyday best. That's only gotten better with age. And wonderfully, unlike other suits, will never go out of fashion or suffer being buttoned up or hemmed in. Just the opposite. This fine and festive native suit I believe, will serve me well for more than a few more decades. Well, whether it's your birthday or not, why not follow suit, so to speak, and appreciate your one-of-a-kind, one and only earth suit. Yes. And next to last, a poem I made on my 59th, Cobble Hill, Brooklyn. Bare feet, hands, heart, loins. The way I came into the world then, am living and loving into the world now. An ever-fresh body of being, feeling, all essence and innocence, nascence and renaissance. And to close, to a kind of setting sail, I would say, from you, for me, for all of us, in a shower of streamers and confetti. If I could throw them over us, I would do it, but I'm doing it virtually for now. Given a birth, B-E-R-T-H. At birth, on the ship of life, a transatlantic, Pacific, romantic steamer for dreamers and doers of all kinds, especially one-of-a-kinds like you. A floating cabin, all and always your own, with a singular place to rest in, take refuge in, high and dry from storms and squalls, with a window like an eye, keeping an eye with yours on the world around you. Till now. And now, on this next leg, waving hand and heart of your voyage through time and space, to new waters and next ports of call, as the whole ship sails on. Thank you again for leaning in, for feeling in, for enthusing in, and sharing these shows with others, as many of you do, and I love it when you do. Thanks, too, for those who send affirmations to me, and for those kind listeners who send greatly welcome donations that help support the work I do to freshly enlighten and further enliven you and others. If there's some theme of interest I haven't yet covered in the last 146 shows that you'd like me to create a broadcast around, send me an email. Colin@thepoetorialist.com. What was your experience of this show on birthdays? I'd love to know. Those contributing can donate by Venmo to Fivefold, Fivefold, at pipeline.com, or by PayPal to me to the same email. or by check and regular mail to me at P.O. Box 1032, Westerly, Rhode Island, 02891, or through my site, thepoetorialist.com, in the Donate tab. Patrons can occasionally sponsor or host me as a working poet in residence in an agreed place in the U.S. or elsewhere in the world to create a new flight of poetic art dedicated to them. Email me to explore. Meanwhile, you can hear all the broadcasts online, on YouTube, on the Floating Poetry playlist. I hope you'll lean in soon again. Till then, dear listeners, a bright-hearted, bright-eyed toast to your birthday, whenever it is, or was, to the joys of celebrating them for people of all ages, from the newborns to the well-aged around us, and all those in between, of honoring their best selves, the things we love or admire about them, and their latest and next revolution around the great circle of life. And yes, to giving birth, to beautiful things inside you and out into the world. Goodbye for now, and good spirits.